everyone. Hello. Thank you for responding. My name is Shelby Dawkins-Law, and I am a graduate research and teaching associate here at the Center for Urban Education. And on behalf of our family, I'd like to welcome all of you to this very exciting, highly anticipated event. We're having a book signing and release party here with our authors, all members of the Q family that I deeply admire. So their book is called These Kids Are Out of Control, Why We Must Reimagine Classroom Management for Equity. And our authors are Dr. Rich Milner IV, Dr. Heather Cunningham, Dr. Lori DeLaley O'Connor, and Dr. Erica Gold Kestenberg. Please join me in applauding. So I'd like to offer a brief introduction before I hand things over to Kristen Hardy, who is here with us from Chatham University. Dr. H. Rich Milner IV, also known as Rich or lovingly as Doc by us students, is the Cornelius Vanderbilt Professor of Education at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Milner has a career's worth of achievements and then some, but I'd like to highlight one in particular. Dr. Milner recently delivered the 15th annual American Educational Research Association Brown Lecture in Washington, D.C. His talk was moving, to say the least, and his emphasis on truth-telling to appropriately name discipline as punishment aligns with our central aim of These Kids Are Out of Control, in that it challenges us to rethink oppressive classroom practices and expect more of ourselves when we consider our role as serving students, not managing them. Dr. Milner recently transitioned from his role here as director of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education Center for Urban Education. Doc, thank you for traveling back here to your former home here in the city of Bridges. We're excited to see you again and look forward to learning more about your most recent publication with these outstanding members of the Q family. Dr. Heather B. Cunningham is an assistant professor of education at Chatham University here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and is a graduate of the PhD program here in instruction and learning. She is a teacher educator, and through that role, she fulfills her passion to facilitate teachers' growing understanding of how their cultural beliefs and values shape their practices and students' experiences. Her experience as a social studies and emerging English learners teacher informs her study of what constitutes effective teaching for minoritized students. Next, we have Dr. Lori DeLaley O'Connor, who is an assistant professor of urban education here at the University of Pittsburgh. She received her PhD in sociology from Northwestern University. She has a long list of accomplishments as well, but one I'd like to highlight is that she is a pioneer here at the University of Pittsburgh. I knew that. You are a pioneer. Having played an integral role in winning a grant from the National Science Foundation, which established our very new PhD program in urban and special education, which fully funds doctoral students, including a book scholarship. So I'm very impressed by that. And we have Dr. Erica Gold Kestenberg. She earned her PhD here at the University of Pittsburgh as well, and it's in the multidisciplinary education with a multidisciplinary focus on social justice. Dr. Gold Kestenberg is the heart of the Center for Urban Education, and I do say that earnestly. As the first director of Q, she has laid the foundation for possibility that allows this collaboration to exist. So again, these are our four authors. I just want to preface by saying that this text is a product of collaboration that began because they came together here at Q. And at Q, we believe that our purpose is to learn, share, and transform the educational landscape in Pittsburgh and beyond. In pursuing this mission, these four dynamic scholars formed a team that is accomplishing precisely that. This text rejects the traditional boundaries of classroom management, discipline, and punishment, providing a tool that helps educators and those who ally themselves with them to ensure that we are co-creating responsive and equitable environments that are safe above all else, ensuring that learning can happen in that different way, in the different ways that it manifests are valued. So I'd like to invite Kristen Hardy here from Chatham University. They are co-sponsoring this book signing and release party. And following that, we'll hear from the writers as I outlined before, and then we'll break into the signing and then the celebration and the fantastic cake that awaits us. Thank you for being patient and welcome.
Hello, I'm Kristen Hardy. I'm the chairperson of the Education Department at Chatham University. We are pleased to co-sponsor this event with the University of Pittsburgh Center for Urban Education, as we too have a strong commitment to social justice and equity in education. We were very eager to have Dr. Heather Cunningham join our department after she completed her doctoral work and was also a faculty member under the guidance of Dr. Rich Milner. Her work and that of her colleagues has assisted us greatly in our commitment to prepare quality educators. We are very fortunate that the author's work this evening is or will be in the hands of many educators here and around the nation. So thank you for joining us tonight. Enjoy the event.
Thank you all for coming this evening. As Shelby mentioned, I am Lori DeLaly O'Connor, and I'm an assistant professor here at the Center for Urban Education, as well as one of the co-authors of this book. Thank you to everyone at Chatham, at the Pitt School of Education, at the Center for Urban Education, for all of their support in writing this book, in helping us as we edited this book, and in celebrating us as this book comes to fruition. I'd like to give particular thanks to our current director, Dr. Elon Dancy, our center administrator, Ms. Amy Witherspoon, and the School of Education Marketing and Communications Manager, Cassia Krogan. They really made this event possible tonight. It's because of them that you received the email, that you're sitting in these chairs, that you're going to enjoy a delicious cake and celebrate with us. I'm grateful to see among you many educators that we've had the privilege to work with, friends, family members, students of ours, and just general cheerleaders and supporters. We are truly grateful for this support and the important work you do in educating young people and supporting those who educate young people. We aren't going to talk for very long because really there's cake. It was in my car. It smells really good. And there's a picture of a book. And there's a picture of a book on it, right? But we wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of the book that you are here to celebrate. Some of you, I saw you reading in the hallways. Some of you probably have already read it. And we want to give you the opportunity to know a little bit more about what we were trying to do with this project so that you could dive right in, so that you can share it, so that you can encourage the educators in your life to maybe pick up a copy or two. But I can say that this book was truly a labor of friendship and love. Dr. Milner brought the four of us together to create a book that was something that we all wished we had had when we were classroom teachers, or that we really heard from other classroom teachers that they needed and that they would actually use. For us, this book is about how to co-create classrooms and other learning spaces that above all are safe, are affirming, are learning-centered, are intellectually challenging and engaging, rather than trying to manage or control student behavior. That's really the key. That's why these kids are out of control, is in quotes. We set out to write a book that highlighted what is known in the literature, in theory and research and practice, but that could serve as an engaging practical guide that had vignettes that sound like the classrooms and student-teacher interactions that we were familiar with and that many of you in this room are familiar with, and that had reflection questions and activities that actually support growth and learning. We're pretty pleased with the end product, and we really hope that you will be too. I just want to let you know that broadly, we frame the book around the powerful links between schools and the cradle to prison pipeline. In particular, we talk about both outside of school factors like inequitable school funding, unequal access to services that impact students' experiences of schools, as well as the inside of school links. So zero tolerance discipline policies, the criminalization of school facilities with the inclusion of things like SROs and metal detectors. Factors that marginalize, in particular, as we stress throughout the book, students of color, students living below the poverty line, students whose first language is not English, students who receive special education services, and their families, and the communities that they come from every day. So our goal is that this book will support educators in understanding how these factors influence student academic and social outcomes, as well as their relationships, those student-teacher relationships that we know are at the core of learning, and that we provide deliberate practices that teachers can use in their everyday to disrupt these connections. In particular, as I mentioned, and as my colleagues will share, through concrete recommendations, through vignettes, through activities, and through reflection questions, we highlight the importance of creating a caring, rigorous classroom environment and understanding and practicing restorative discipline. My colleague Dr. Heather Cunningham will share an example of one of the vignettes and frame the ways that we can support educators in this work.
I just have to pause and say I have so much family in this room. I feel so lucky. I have my family of blood. My folks are here with my twin 4-year-olds in the hallway and my sister and my husband. And so I'm so blessed to have all of them here today. I have my Pitt family here that helped train me to be the academic that I am today, and my Q family in particular here. And so again, yet another level of family that I experience. And I have my Chatham family here, who were so excited to be part of this event tonight. And so I'm just really grateful to have all of you here. As I reflected on what it was about this book that I wanted to share, I had a lot of fun writing some of the vignettes for this book. And we had some good laughs as we were moving through this. So I wanted to share one of the vignettes that I thought turned out particularly well. I don't know, it's all right. But so I wanted to share this vignette with you because I think it's a good example of one of the very real discipline situations that we address throughout the book, and it models one of the strategies that we hope educators use when addressing a situation such as this. And as I'm reading this, so many of the vignettes that I wrote about came from my inspirations, came from things that I saw or things that I heard others see as a teacher. And I forgot to mention I have my City High family here tonight too. So again, I have so many family folks here tonight, and thanks all for coming. So Mrs. Morrison was upset. For the third time this week, someone had used blue permanent marker to scrawl the phrase, "Davis sucks," on a desk in the classroom. And it was only September. Why was graffiti a problem already, this early in the school year? As Mrs. Morrison had just wiped all of the desks clean at the beginning of the day, she believed that the person responsible was one of the students right here in front of her in her first block pre-algebra class. Now I want you to think to yourself, what do you think Mrs. Morrison should do to address this situation? What have you seen local educators do in schools that you're familiar with? Just think to yourself for a moment. So she believed the person responsible was right in front of her in her first block pre-algebra class. Now, if Mrs. Morrison is following the ideas we discuss in our book, here's how we hope the scenario might play out. Mrs. Morrison decided to call a class circle to discuss the matter. At Davis Middle School, teachers use circle processes frequently. They particularly use them in the beginning of the school year as they built community among students coming from 3 different elementary schools. So when Mrs. Morrison told her class, "I need everyone to circle up, I have a concern that we need to discuss," students knew what to do. Everyone picked up their chairs, placed them in a circle at the front of the room, and sat down facing one another. Mrs. Morrison reminded everyone that Davis community members are connected by common beliefs in academic excellence, perseverance, and kindness, but that everyone had the right to individual beliefs too. After this introduction, Mrs. Morrison said, "I'm upset because for the third time this week, I believe that someone in this group wrote 'Davis sucks' on one of the desks in this room,
using a permanent marker. How do you all feel about this? She then passed the small inflatable globe to Jenna, the student who was seated on her right. Jenna held the talking piece for a moment, said nothing, and silently passed it to Silas, who was seated on her right. Silas said, "Permanent marker's tough to remove. I feel bad for Mrs. Morrison if she's the one scrubbing the marker off the desks." Silas passed the globe to the student on his right, Jamar. Jamar said, "Well, I know who did it, and I think that person should own up to it." He passed the ball to Alicia, who said, "Well, I don't know who did it, but it makes me feel bad to see that because I like going to school here." She passed the globe to Myra next to her, who said, "I like going to school here too. I don't think our school sucks. I don't understand why someone would write that." After a few more students participated, the globe was passed to Eli. Eli said, "Well, I don't like going to school here. My old school had a soccer team, but this school doesn't have one. They told all of us that came here from Green Elementary that Davis had a soccer team, and it doesn't. So I can't play soccer here like I did at Green. All of the other middle schools have a soccer team. This school sucks." The group was silent. Mrs. Morrison then said, "So Eli, what happened?" Eli responded, "Well, I hate it here because I can't play soccer. So I've been writing that because it's true. Davis sucks." As the globe was passed around the circle, Brandon and Colin, who had also come to Davis from Green, admitted that they also had been writing the same message around the school for the same reason. Mrs. Morrison then said to the three boys, "Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge how much I respect your honesty, and I'm impressed with the courage that you have to admit this within our class circle. No matter what else we talk about now, you are honest and you are courageous, and it makes me proud to know that you are part of the Davis community. I can see now that the three of you have been very disappointed and frustrated, and I understand why. Can you see any harm to others that has resulted from your actions?" Eli responded, "No," and then passed the globe. When the globe came around to Brandon, he said that he thought that Mrs. Morrison was harmed because she had to wash the desks off every time it happened. After he passed the globe, a few other students commented that Alicia and Myra were harmed because seeing the graffiti made them feel bad about their school. Then other students commented that it made them feel bad too. Mrs. Morrison then asked the group, "So what needs to be done here to make things right?" Colin thought that he, Brandon, and Eli should apologize to Mrs. Morrison and the class for the graffiti. Colin went first and apologized wholeheartedly to Mrs. Morrison and the class. After a few moments, Brandon spoke up. He said he was sorry too and he didn't mean to harm anybody. Finally, Eli spoke again and said he was sorry that his actions meant that Mrs. Morrison had to clean the desks and that some students felt bad about what he wrote. Brandon then offered to stay through the morning break period and clean the latest writing off the desk so that Mrs. Morrison didn't have to do it herself again. Then Alicia said, "Mrs. Morrison, what can we do to start a soccer team at this school? Maybe Eli, Brandon, and Colin would like our school more if Davis had a soccer team." The class then moved into an animated discussion about how they could best go about organizing a school soccer team. After an initial plan had been made, students agreed to talk with their parents about their idea. Mrs. Morrison closed the circle process. All of the students, including Brandon, Eli, and Colin, were smiling. The bell rang and students put their chairs away and filed into the hallway. Brandon grabbed a spray bottle and rag from the closet and began to clean the writing off the desk. Thank you.
So one of the things that will follow then all of the vignettes that we have are reflection questions. And in addition to the reflection questions that we have at the end of each vignette, there are also a number of other opportunities to reflect on our practice throughout the book. And we think that this is one of the things that makes it valuable for us because in addition to providing information, it also gives you opportunities to pause and to really internalize what we're reading and learning from the text and to really think about ourselves because change really begins from within. And that's where this all starts, yeah? And so that's what the reflection questions provide. And one of the things that we hope you get out of the text also is just to really pay attention to what our sphere of influence is, because there's so many factors that play a role in what's happening in education that sometimes it can get frustrating, all the systems that are at play, and to know that we actually can be a part of disrupting systems that we don't think are working well for ourselves or our students. And so one of the questions that I always ask myself at any given time in any space really, but especially in the educational space, is am I being someone who's perpetuating or disrupting? And so that's something else that I'm continually reflecting on. And one of the ways that I disrupt, especially systems of oppression within our education system, is by deeply listening. One of the things that that circle provides is for us to really stop and listen. Really, truly listen to our students. It's a beautiful opportunity. And one of the questions that we have here, for instance, when we hear someone say, Davis sucks, what are some of the ways that people might often respond to that? Let's really ask that question. So if someone's walking down the hall and saying, Davis sucks, or in your classroom, Davis sucks, or this sucks, how might educators respond that would perpetuate a system of oppression to that kind of a question? Hypothetically speaking, what might that look like? Feel free to share a thought or two. Yes.
By disciplining them instead of asking them why they said that.
Yeah. And discipline, yeah, please.
By saying that's not appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shutting them down. Mm-hmm.
By trying to get the kids to tell each other.
By trying what?
To get the kids to tell, not in a circle setting, but like to tell on each other, like putting them beside one each one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Rodi?
Trying to see why they did it and try to fix it.
Wouldn't that be great, my son? Thank you very much. Also known as Ori in one of the earlier chapters. A real life experience inspired one of the stories. Thank you, son. Yes. And so truly, what's possible? I mean, those are all actual, some of the many, many responses we can have, right? And when we think about disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline, which one of those real-life responses perpetuates and sends students on the school-to-prison pipeline, right? Which are often reactions in the moment. And which responses, right, difference between reaction and responding, a response, actually builds relationship and connection and a greater sense of belonging in the classroom. And also when we listen, when we deeply listen to our students, what's possible there? We get to learn who our students are so we can be more culturally responsive, right? We get to listen to our students so that we can hear what's really not working for them. Why does Davis suck? Oh, it's because you don't have a soccer. We can do that. We can create a soccer team, right? What else? What else sucks about it? Tell me more. And we even need to be open to hearing why we suck as educators sometimes. And what's possible for us to learn, because I truly believe that everything that we need to know to really reach and teach our students so that they thrive every day in our classroom, they can tell us. And they actually do tell us on a regular basis. And so that's why we have questions in this book like, have I listened and heard what the student is communicating verbally? And the language is intentional here. I didn't say, right? We didn't say, what did they say? But what are they communicating? Right, there's something there for us to learn. What's underneath what they're saying? Something's not working for me. I need you to hear. I need you to see me. Right? I'm confused. I don't understand this. Or something just happened to me and I'm in pain. Right? And so are we going to listen? Are we going to connect? Are we going to take advantage of that as a relationship building opportunity? Or are we going to disconnect, send them out of the room, and send them on the school-to-prison pipeline? And when we do that, it doesn't just impact that student. It impacts the entire climate and culture in our classroom for all students. When we send out one student, do the other students feel safe in my space, in my classroom, in our classroom? Does it feel like our classroom? If they could feel like they could get sent out at any time? And I'm not saying that there aren't times to do that, by the way. Right? There is a time and place for everything. What I want us always, and what I'm always trying to consider is, when really? right? And can I respond versus react? Because when I respond, it's more during those times that it's necessary, right? Is someone unsafe in the classroom, something like that. Versus reacting when maybe it's just something going on for me and maybe I just need to stop and listen and breathe. You know? And so those are the moments that are provided in our book. Just pause, reflect, and consider our practice. And know that at any point in time, a lot of the power is in our hands. Are we disrupting or perpetuating? Are we building bridges and relationships and deepening our connections? Or are we disconnected? And what's possible in all the above? Thank you.
All right, y'all, I didn't want to stand and talk. I'm just going to say that. And my wife was very clear. She was like, don't go up in there crying, right? Don't go so, the University of Pittsburgh, in a very serious way, is a very special space for me. So I just want to acknowledge how grateful I am to be back here. I also want to begin by indeed making sure that I acknowledge our dean, or your dean, Valerie Kenlock, who is actually my dean as well at one point. I also see Dean Patel in the back, so thank you for being here. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Elon in his absence, and of course under Elon is for sure Amy Witherspoon. So make sure you wave. Amy keeps things going. I want to make sure I acknowledge all of the other great experts here, the folks, team members. I see Dana Thompson, Dorsey back, Kenny Donaldson back there, Alvin Pierman, where's Alvin? I'm so nervous, y'all. Y'all made me nervous. But I just really want to take this opportunity to just acknowledge all of the team members in the center. This is a special place, and it's a special place because of the outstanding members of the team, and to every graduate student, every undergraduate student, every community member who has played a central role in this work. I really appreciate you colleagues here. I see Trish there and Anna and others. I just appreciate your being here, your support. We came together. I really wanted to write this book because it was really about a labor of friendship and a labor of love in a very professional way, if you will, among my colleagues. I wanted to make sure we were able to create a project such that we could do edition after edition, and so that we could, of course, stay together on that. I have identical twin daughters, Anna and Elise, and if you want something from me, start talking to me about Anna and Elise, and chances are I will give you anything you want. And I spent a lot of time visiting preschools prior to deciding on a preschool, and I visited preschools in different states, in Tennessee, here in Pittsburgh as well. Trying to find a place for my little special one, like yours, like you think your little darlings are special. I think mine are special too, right? And the same thing is true for other folks' children as well, right? Parents give a darn about their children, right? And so we're trying to find these spaces and create these spaces that make sense for our children. And so I remember being in one space, and as I walked in, I was having casual conversation with the preschool teacher, and the teacher turned away from our conversation briefly, and she called on Jamal, the only black student in the class, among a group of among a group of 5 students, and she pointed out Jamal, and she said, "Jamal, you're too loud. Let's use your indoor voice, right?" And so she turned back to me, and we talked again and about the sort of nature of the experiences and so forth. And soon thereafter, she turned again to the group of students who were in the center of the classroom, and again she placed her attention on Jamal, the one black student who was apparently not using his indoor voice. Again, Jamal, you're too loud. I'm going to have to ask you to take your seat if you don't get it together. And, friends and colleagues, I was stunned because what I observed was a group of 5 students not using their indoor voice, right? And so we know teachers have great intentions. We know they walk into those classrooms giving it all they have every day. But because of these biases and these worldviews and so forth, they can actually perpetuate and create classroom environments such that particular groups of students, namely black and brown students, are underserved and are disciplined at really alarming rates. And with that one experience, and in the midst of my observing data across the Office of Civil Rights and others, what that demonstrated to me was that disparity, y'all, starts in preschool. It starts in preschool. And so if we're starting, I always thought when you look at the data, 27% of all office referrals for preschoolers are for black students. 27%, although they represent about 9 or 10% of the general population. That tells us that we're doing something to really create, as Lori and others have said, a school-to-prison pipeline in ways that we really need to disrupt. And so we can't talk about classroom management. We can't talk about discipline. We can't talk about punishment without talking about race. Because this work is raced. It's raced. It's raced because we know from the Office of Civil Rights that 40% of all suspensions across this country are to black students. And not only is this work raced, it's blacked. Right? And so you can talk about other races, and indeed everybody has a race, and we're all, we care about it and I love it. We are the world, we can hold hands, right? But we need to really interrogate it. We've got to think very seriously about what we're doing and what we're allowing to happen to black students in particular. And so what I hope this book will do is it will shed light on some of those disparities. And let me be clear, in this book we talk very explicitly about the role of race in thinking about classroom management. Classroom management office referrals tend to originate on the classroom level. And so when students are sent out to the classroom, of course, building school administrators have to make a decision about what happens to those students next. And quite often what happens is those students are, as Monique Morris would call, pushed out, and they miss important instructional time. So, we talk about this notion that there is an achievement gap. I would argue that it's nonsense. There is no achievement gap. But we really find are opportunity gaps because students are missing important instructional opportunities when they're in the classroom. Are y'all still in here with me? Right.
Yes.
So to be clear, what we hope this book will be is not a panacea, but an invitation, if you will, to rethink, to reimagine, and as Erica has said, for us to really reflect on who we are and our positionalities in this work. As Cornel West has made clear, it is difficult for us to work for freedom on behalf of other folks until we're free ourselves, right? And so I hope this book is a journey, if you will, towards a space of emancipation, a journey, if you will, towards a space where we might rethink things that we've thought we knew in the past. I also want to just stress the importance of thinking about the role of instructional practices, the role of thinking about and being very clear that our students actually should be out of control. Bodies are not to be controlled. I have, again, Anna and Elise are, and they're going to get so mad at me for always using them as examples, but I can do that until they tell me not to do it. But, Anna and Elise are very, very similar in terms of how they look, but they're very, very different in terms of what their needs are, right? And so we've got to be responsive and we got to operate from a position of equity and move away from notions of equality. And so I will end there just by saying I'm so honored to be back. We hope you find the book useful. I hope I didn't embarrass my colleagues here by preaching a little bit, but I want to be clear that the next time I come to Pittsburgh or wherever I might go, that we are serious about disrupting, to use Erica's language in here. We're serious about the education of all of our children, but in particular, we need to really think about what we're doing or not doing to support black students. That's right, I said it, black students. Right? So thank you.
Thank you to each of you for sharing all you have about your text. Today we heard from these author innovators and we learned about the text, how it came to be, where they intended to go. They shared experiences from the text to illustrate what we should expect from the tool And then they reflected on the transformation process they sparked while collaborating to facilitate real change for the students we all here share a mission to serve. So thank you for coming to this event. We're now going to open it up for the signing, and you can ask the authors questions as you go about that. Also, we have refreshments, again, as we've said, and a delicious cake. I mean, I assume it's delicious. It smells good. But yes, thank you all for being here, and I hope you come again soon to our future events.